Alrighty guys, a while ago Core sent me their EDC ratchet belt to take a look at, and I was originally a little suspect because they had like a weight limit associated with it, not for load bearing purposes but for the ratchet mechanism. However, the EDC belt held up pretty well to a fairly significant load, and then not too long ago they hit me up to take a look at their two-piece battle belt, which has the same selling point in the ratcheting belt buckle, so you can really get a finite sizing on it that's pretty easy to manipulate. And they've really, I think they've beefed up kind of the quality of the belt. There was nothing wrong with the EDC belt, but there got to be a certain point where you were just asking too much of it as a trouser belt. The two-piece system, though, has some really interesting components to it. So what I'd like to do is get it on the table and kind of walk you guys through the assembly process, because it's kind of unique. You size your own belt as you go. So I'll walk you through the directions there and kind of what that looks like. And then I'll show you the kind of weight that I've had on here and what I've had success with. So let's get it on the table. All right, so trying to keep everything in frame here might be a little challenging, but we'll walk through this and I'll show you kind of guys what I've got set up on here. All right, so this is the Core two-piece battle belt. Comes with a pretty unique inner belt and then the outer belt, which we'll get to in a little bit. It also comes with a pretty well done set of instructions, all the hardware that you need. So your Allen key and the little nuts there, or bolts, and then sizing guide. All right, so you buy everybody buys the same size, and then you have your choice between the style of buckle there. So I went with kind of that hex pattern, which also seems to be the example in the owner's manual. I don't remember what the other pattern looks like. It's nothing too extreme. All right. So you've got your tape measure here, and the instructions are spelled out on the tape measure pretty well. You line up the end of the belt with one end, and then your pant size is where you stop on the other end. So being winter and not wanting to be too aggressive in the cut, I sized it for a 36 and then kind of looked at where everything lied, starting with the outer belt, and then I kind of went, the next full column over and cut that. And I ended up having to cut it, I think, 3 separate times. So once I had it sized for 36 and realized that it was too large, I went down to my true waist size, cut it for 34. It was still too large, and I think I ended up cutting at least another 3 inches off from there. So moral of the story is, cut it for your pant size. Start from there. Don't be afraid of that. And then if you cut it for that and it's too small, you can kind of justify to them like, hey, I followed your directions and it's too small. But you'll end up cutting it less, which there's no harm in cutting it more, as you need to size down. So if you size it kind of at your worst, and then you're planning on getting more fit as the year goes on or something like that, you can always cut extra inches off there. It's not a problem. So I did that, and then I followed the same directions for the inner belt. They say something along the lines of subtract 1 inch on your inner belt and cut it. So I went with 33, having had success on the outer belt, and 33 ended up being even more long on the inner belt than I was long on the outer belt. And that is based off of kind of the interesting way that they want this inner belt to work. So I think maybe I was more timid on the inner belt. I can't remember. But essentially, actually, I kind of defaulted to making this too long anyways. So on the inner belt, the way they want this to work once it's all sized is that the center portion here has no doubled up belt behind it. So really when it's secured, it'll look like that. And this hex pattern portion should lay right over where your belt buckle will eventually go, so that when you add the outer belt, it cuts down on the bulk in the buckle region, which I think is a really smart way of doing it. The only downside really is that you don't get quite as much structure on your inner belt, because typically you would have kind of that scuba webbing overlap, and then it's really, really solid. This one kind of hedges your bet on comfort versus storing or mounting anything to the inner belt. So if you're somebody that has historically put your holster on your inner belt, maybe cut it a little bit longer and play around with some overlap and see how you like that. I ended up not really caring for the overlap on this one and just kind of followed their directions. Once you have everything cut, then you install your hardware. So on the inner belt, it's just this metal end cap here, and trying to squeeze that down. It doesn't lay quite as flat as I would have liked. And I don't know what I could have done to improve that, or if I did anything wrong with it. But ultimately, if you've got some wider pliers and you're not afraid of marring this or potentially crimping it a little bit, you could really gur it down a bit more. I don't have any issue with necessarily how it's lying right now. I just don't know if it'll be prone to opening back up. That's my only concern there. It is a very nice rigid inner belt. You can see I'm not really able to fold that over. It's definitely structured with the only kind of caveat there being in the middle, you've got some play. But out on the sides, if you have a holster mounted on there, you shouldn't see much sag. It's just not going to be quite as married to the other half of the belt as you would typically have. Looking at the outer belt here, so the portion that you cut ends up being mounted into the buckle. So you flip this throw lever as your first step. You remove these nuts here, bolts here, slide it in, and then as you kind of compress the lever, kind of the one downside to this mechanism is the way the teeth kind of pivot in, it ends up pulling the belt out just a little bit, so it doesn't bottom out quite as much as I would like. And there's really no functional reason for that. I feel like that would, I don't know, there's just more to bite onto then, I guess. And I don't know if they've ever played around with having the throw lever work the opposite direction, so it kind of tries to suck the belt in. I don't know. It hasn't come off on me, and it feels pretty secure, so I'm not super worried about it. I don't know. It's just a personal, super subjective thing of mine. Right. I was curious if the ratchet portion would look any beefier than it did on the EDC belt, and it doesn't really, in my opinion. Let's see. The teeth are a little bit bigger and a little bit wider. So that pound rating that they threw on the EDC belt, I didn't notice one on the Battle Belt when I looked at the website. So it's a little bit bigger. Nothing crazy, super noticeable. Really, it just kind of fills up the same portion of the belt, being a slightly wider belt, as you can see right there. All right, so it went from an 1.5 inch belt to an 1 3/4 inch belt. That said, functionally, I dig it. I haven't had any concerns with it. They do include this little keeper here, so that if you need to run more Battle Belt through there, or more overlap through there, you can secure the end. I kind of sized it so it would butt right up against my mag here, and I wouldn't really have to worry about policing that up too much. But as you can see, I've been using a fair amount of weight on here. Obviously, I don't have the IFAK insert here right now, and I don't have the Gista loaded, but they were when I was using it. And then multi-tool pouch, SIG X, I think X series. I can't remember the exact name of it. The full-size frame, so not a small pistol by any means. A couple pistol mags and a loaded P-mag, and no issues with it structurally. I have kind of eaten up a good bit of the continuity here. So what I need to do is go back through and put some sticky Velcro on the backs of these tech locks so they can engage with the inner belt a little bit better. On my pistol side, I haven't had too many issues. The curvature here, because it is a fairly stiff belt, that ends up losing a little bit of continuity on either side of it. And then obviously these two pouches, I used the belt loops just because that's what my personal preference is. If I had used the Molly, that would have saved a lot more continuity there. So core battle belt. I apologize, I don't remember off the top of my head how much it costs. I did look it up and then I forgot it. It is fairly efficient in your real estate. So I've got this magazine is covering MOLLE there. I just happened to use a tech lock. So the MOLLE field goes all the way up to the buckle on the female end, and then on the male end, you can kind of game it a little bit. You can see if I'd cut it more aggressive, I've got some more teeth here that I could use up to kind of bring it all the way to this this glove loop here. I didn't want to size it too much smaller. And then kind of looking at that, I now notice that if I'm a 34-inch waist and I'm getting that close to the end, if you are a really, really small dude, like rocking a 30-inch waist or smaller, you may have issues with this belt getting small enough because you cannot take it. No, I apologize. That's dumb, because you can always cut more off of this end. So your running end here is kind of doesn't matter. You just keep cutting this way. I'm sorry, that was a dumb thought. Yeah, it should be infinitely sizable, as small as you want to get by cutting off on the female end as far back as you need to. Shower thoughts out of this for too long. All right, there you go. Core battle belt. It does have a 1-year warranty. They caution you if you cut it too small, that's not covered by the warranty. But I think if you could show that you cut it to the right length, they kind of don't have a leg to stand on there. And I think that's why they are so there's so much cushion built into this. If you cut it following their directions, you will find yourself having to cut more off, which is totally fine, especially if it's the first time doing it. As far as cutting it goes, I used a pair of kitchen shears just because I was too lazy to come grab medical shears from the garage. Those worked all right. It was a little bit of a struggle, especially on the outer belt getting through there. Inner belt put up a good fight as well, which speaks to kind of its structure. But yeah, if you got any questions on it, absolutely hit me up in the comments. I'm still putting it through its paces, but you can see the ratchet is totally healthy. I haven't ripped off any teeth, and I think that would be kind of the first sign of this thing failing, is if you had kind of ground down or flattened one of the teeth from just having too much load on there and then jostling it around. But seems to be going strong, and we're kind of out of range season here in North Dakota, but maybe I can squeeze in another couple weekends during the winter. So thanks for watching. Check you guys out later.